Give us a great welcome to Senator Rick Santorum.
I always believed that God was always sending me messages or sending me people to try to help me. And I never wanted those things. But thank God He sent me a good woman who I met. But Karen and I were both on sort of the beginning of a journey. Both of us had fallen away from our faith, fallen away from really paying much attention to what God was calling for us in our lives. We just happened to meet at a time when both of us were searching. And we started searching together. It's sort of like puppy love with the Lord. You know, little baby steps with the Lord. And as we got more and more engaged in, well, running for Congress and then miraculously winning a congressional race. I ran for Congress when I was 32 years old for the House of Representatives and ran against somebody who had been there 14 years in a heavily Democratic district. I'm a Republican. I was given no chance. I had no money. On election night when I miraculously won this race, the Associated Press reported in their wire story that the congressman I beat lost, but didn't even include my name in the story that I won. That's true. I know that because the next day the Wall Street Journal wrote a little article in the paper saying on election night we got this wire story that this guy had lost, but we didn't know who won, so we called the National Republican Congressional Committee, which is in Washington, D.C., which oversees all of Republican congressional campaigns, and they said, who was your candidate in this district? And they didn't have my name. That's a true story. So I was not high on the priority list. In many respects, it was a miracle. I mean, it's a 1 in a million that I won that race. But the great thing about that is I had no expectations, so I could go to Washington, D.C. In fact, I was told, even before I ran, that Pennsylvania, because our state is not gaining much in population, that Pennsylvania in 1992, which was the next election after the one I won, that we were going to lose 2 congressional seats to Texas, which is growing, and that I would be one of them. So you would, if you won this election, which I did, I'd only serve 2 years, and then they eliminated my district, which is exactly what they did. They eliminated my district, they chopped it up into 3 or 4 different pieces, and put me in with another congressman who had been in for 28 years. And again, because I went to Washington, D.C., and I just did what I thought was right, and didn't worry about the consequences, it was one of those great lessons that if you don't think about what you're doing means to your future, if you just think about what you're doing means to the one you're accountable to. I always say I have a constituency of 1. And so I was just doing what I thought was right. Now, I didn't think about it in anything larger terms than that, to be very honest with you, but I was just doing what I thought was right. And it turned out that doing things that you think are right actually is good politics. And so I got put in this heavily, even worse Democratic district, 70%. The old Steel Valley of Pittsburgh, all of these closed down mills, that was my district. And I was able to win as a Republican in that district and conservative in that district. And then I was now the hottest thing in the world, man. I just won, beat 2 incumbents. I won in heavily Democratic districts, so I ran for the United States Senate 2 years later against another Democratic incumbent. And again, worked hard. Nobody works hard. I mean, I work hard. That's one thing. My dad is an immigrant to this country. He taught me, you know, hard work is everything. It's, you know, you can be smart, but you work hard in America, you can accomplish anything. And so that's what I did. I just worked hard. And I won. A couple of things happened. I get the United States Senate. Now I've been running every 2 years. You know, Congress is every 2 years, so you constantly run. Particularly in my district, you had to just work so hard. I'll never forget, it was the springtime after I just won the election. And we're doing the change out of clothes. Up north, you change clothes from winter to summer. I don't know if you guys do that here. what we do up north. And so we're changing the clothes out. And at the time we had a 4-year-old. And so she brings out these pajamas, and she looks at these pajamas and says, "Oh, Johnny," our 4-year-old, "Johnny wore those every night to bed. Don't you remember these pajamas?" I looked at those pajamas. I said, "I've never seen those pajamas." I was a busy man. I was working hard. But I had forgotten about the other aspect of my life. And so that was sort of a moment to me that started me on this path of thinking about, okay, what am I really supposed to be doing here? What really is important? And then 2 people stepped in during that period of time. One guy who was walking down the hallway in the United States outside the Senate chamber. And the senator came up to me and put his arm on my shoulder and he said, "Hey Rick," he said, "You know, we have a Senate Bible study every Thursday at noon. Do you think about it? You want to come?" I said, "Well, you know, I got a 6-year term now. I got a little time I can take. Maybe I can make a little time, you know, to read the Bible. Yeah, okay, yeah. I can make. I'm busy, but I can make an hour, you know, to do that." Then the second thing happened was that we moved our family down from Pennsylvania down to Virginia so they could be with me more often. We were finding I just wasn't spending any time at home, given the long hours in Washington, D.C. And so we found a church. And I remember walking in and listening to this pastor, and he got up and he preached the gospel like I'd never heard the gospel preached before. And it just blew me away. I remember walking outside that church and being angry that for the first 37 years of my life, I had never heard that. And that pastor never had the courage to be able to tell the real, unvarnished truth about what the gospel of Jesus Christ meant to me. And from that point on, my life changed. From that point on, I could say before that, if you asked me a question about my faith, you know, everything from the Trinity to virgin birth, I check every single box. I knew it all. I knew what the Bible taught. But my faith was something that I did occasionally, by then mostly on Sunday. But it wasn't who I was. It wasn't the center of my life. It wasn't driving my life. I wasn't pursuing God's will. I wasn't in love with Jesus Christ. I was just mailing it in. And figuring that if I knew about my faith, that was enough. And then I tried to live by the laws. I always remember the story of Jesus, the rich man coming up to him and saying, "What do I do to enter the kingdom of heaven?" He says, "Well, keep my commandments." "Oh, Master, I keep my commandments." I do that. I can do that. And he says, what does he say? "Sell everything and follow me." Whoa, wait a minute. This sell everything and follow me, this making you the center of my being, that's a radical change. And it meant everything in my life. And then started to be a better father, a better husband. Started to engage in my church, engage in the Bible study. Started believe it or not, we had a prayer group in the United States Senate that I started. A men's group. We met every Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday was Bible study. Tuesday and Wednesday. There's a chapel in the Capitol building. If you know the rotunda of the Capitol where the big dome is on top, excuse me. Right behind there is a chapel. It's one of the few doors in the Capitol that's locked. I'm not sure I understand that, but it is. So I was able to get the key from the speaker's office so we could go, and the speaker's office was right behind the chapel there. And so we would meet in there, hold ourselves accountable. I found that to be an incredibly important thing. Little groups, small groups, where you meet and you hold each other accountable. You lay everything out. You say, business, no talking politics, no talking bills or anything like that. You just talk about where you are in your walk and your journey. And it went on in the United States Senate. I always tell people I came to the Senate and found the Lord. It usually evokes that kind of response, sadly. But he's there. He's there. He's there in large part because a lot of people are praying that he inject himself. The power of prayer that covers the United States Capitol is amazing. Even given what's going on today, can you imagine how bad it would be if it wasn't for that? But he's there, and that changed my life.